Welcome to Unlearn, the podcast that redefines the playbook for modern business leaders.
In a world where yesterday's truths are today's challenges, every episode brings you bold ideas and visionary strategies to thrive in a world where the only constant is change.
Let's dive in. Welcome to Unlearn. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Unlearn podcast, where we are talking to business leaders who are building modern businesses through partnerships and other things, But today's a special episode because both Kelly and Gilad are one of the OG members of PL, which is great. But Gilad, we haven't seen you in ages. What's happening, man? Tell us a little bit about where you're at.
Wow, a lot has changed. So, where should I start? I moved from ContentSquare to a new company after a decade there. So, started the ClickTail. We sold the company about 6 years ago, and ever since I was at ContentSquare, so about a decade at the same place. And I recently joined DealHub as Chief Revenue Officer. So, it's a big change in my life. A decade's a long time.
I know. Yeah. And part of that decade was also you helping us start Partnership Leaders, which we'll get to at some point in time. But you guys are partners with HubSpot, right?
Oh, yeah. We're definitely partners.
Yeah, big partners of HubSpot, yeah.
All right. Well, we're definitely sending this episode to the marketing team at HubSpot, asking them for some sponsorship dollars.
I'm sure my marketing team would love that.
Exactly. Both sides. You want to partner with HubSpot? You want to partner with DealHub? So cool. All right. Well, tell us what's new. Like you made this change from being a VP of Partnerships to becoming a CRO, and I think our audience would really love to understand the change and what it took. Some of the nuggets from the interview process. Tell us to break this move down.
So let me take you through 1 minute of how I even got into partnerships. So basically, I used to be a lawyer. I hated every minute of it. And the day after the bar, and after about a year of practicing before that, I moved into tech and started in sales. And then it was an APJ. So I realized that the whole market is based on partnerships. Started doing partnerships. And then my former boss joined the company, and he said he came from Adobe. So, he was a longtime partner guy. And he said, how would you like to build a partner program? And I said, I have no idea what that means, but I'm game. I'm already working with partners. It sounds interesting. So I built the ClickTail partner program. Then we sold the company to ContentSquare. And in the process, I was also managing a business unit. So I dipped my toes in direct sales, managing sales, SDR, customer success, pre-sales, etc. And at ContentSquare, it was almost exclusively partnerships. So aside from some, inorganic growth initiatives, which were also supported by partners, it was all kind of an incubation motion. I did partnerships. So it was a long, long journey. And I wasn't planning on becoming a CRO, to be honest. I started the interview process with a few companies wanting to go to a smaller startup, 40 to 80 employees. Today at DealHub, we're over 220 employees, so not exactly what I was looking for. But in the interview process with DealHub, they actually told me that they're looking at me for the main reason why they're looking at me for CRO is my partnerships background, because they believe that the direct motion can only take them to a certain point, and that the future growth of DealHub is going to be through the partner channel. And if that's going to be the case, they want a CRO that is going to push partnerships forward and not hold partnerships back.
Wow. Incredible. And how long was this process?
Oh, wow. It was 2.5 months or 3 months. It was a lot of conversations with the board, with our CEO, for me to do due diligence about the company, for the company to do due diligence about me. We need to make sure that all the pieces fit, and that I can also lead the direct revenue channel, and also the partnerships aspect of the company. So, it's a big change for me, and it was also a big bet for them. Basically, the person I replaced, the CRO, he is one of the co-founders, and he needed to move to become the chief product officer. So they needed to make sure that they're bringing in someone who can take this. They haven't made a change in the executive leadership team in over 6 years. So it was also a journey for them.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. So what were some of the conversations you had with your CEO? Like unpack that a little bit, because they're taking a risk on you, and you're also kind of taking a risk on them, right? But they have this hypothesis that they need someone who is an expert in partnerships, and you've clearly done it really, really well. I mean, your team at ContentSquare still is thriving, and so and I was just on the phone with Adobe this morning, by the way, and they were like complimenting like the work that you all have done. And so but like unpack the CEO conversation, and like the getting the CEO to a level of comfort where they're like, oh, okay, you know what, Gilad is my person.
So to be fair, I've known him for a pretty long time, and the conversation actually started around a friend of mine who was closing his startup, and I made an introduction between them. He was thinking about buying his startup, or he wanted to sell him his startup, and he said, "Look, I'm not really interested in buying a company right now, but let's have a conversation about the CRO position." And when we started the conversation, it was a lot more on the opportunity and where the industry is going, and for him to try to figure out if my mindset was the right mindset, right? If the growth levers that I have in my mind are the same growth levers that he believes will take this company to $100 million, and after that, to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yep.
And I know you just, it's still early days, right? But I'd be curious, even in the, I'm sure once the interview process started, you're already shifting your mindset. But is there anything that you're already thinking about differently than when you were in the partner chair, so to speak, right? As partner people, we're very obsessed with figuring out the partner motion, looking at the business from that lens. The CRO obviously has to see other components. It has to see the direct motion very strong. And I guess the interlay between partners and direct, right? Have you already picked up any kind of shift in where you might have seen it had you been hired to be their SVP of Partnerships, or not yet?
It's a great question, and I think that for me, I've always tried to look at it not just from the partnership side. I've always tried to look at partnerships also from the direct motion side. In ContentSquare, it was very much like that, right? I had to look at everything through the eyes of the CRO in order to be successful with the partner motion there. So I don't think anything changed for me. I think the one thing that I came in with and is changing a bit the way the company thinks as well is that I feel like I have a real opportunity now to make things right. And as partnership people, we have the same bucket list of things we complain about, right? The company sells services and attribution questions and all the friction points. And I'm really trying to see if I eliminate these friction points, am I going to see results that I thought I could get faster in the past? Where there's that always that tension between the direct motion and partnerships. I can't tell you the results yet, but I'm really trying to remove every inch of that. So, for instance, right now, I kind of eliminated the attribution issues. I'm working very, very hard now to get all services out to our partnerships and not to keep anything in. However, I'm still hitting a lot of problems that we all suffer in the SaaS industry, like the multipliers of services on software that you can get, and also a lot of concern in-house, which again I can completely understand, with putting our customers in the hands of a third party, which is something that mature companies can do, and startups have a very, very hard time doing.
Sorry, can you say more about how you got rid of attribution issue?
Yeah, that was a
okay.
I agree with you. That's a pervasive and common problem.
How much time do you have?
45 minutes right now.
I'll take a step back. At ContentSquare, we put in a lot of effort around the question of attribution, putting the guidelines both on sourced revenue and on influenced revenue to a point where it's not that there wasn't friction, but there wasn't as much friction as we didn't eliminate it completely, but we reduced it to a point where it wasn't a blocker. And in my last year in ContentSquare, we actually shifted to also measuring. It started with, we don't care about influenced revenue. It went to, okay, we care about influenced revenue. We got to a point where it was 50-50, right? We care equally about both of them. And in my last year at ContentSquare, it was actually, we don't really care. we have a source target, right? But if you compensate that with real influence, then we're okay with that. We basically measured attachment rates and not just influence or sourced. When I joined DealHub, I wanted to take a step back to the clicktail days. So I artificially eliminated attribution. Doesn't mean that it's not going to come knocking on my door in the future as we scale, but we're today a small enough organization for me to say, listen, I will give credit to a lot of people, even if the system doesn't say partnerships, right? We say outbound SDR, or we say marketing, but we know that a partner had, they pushed them in our direction, and maybe an outbound SDR converted it. That's fine. I'll give the partner the credit, and I'll give the partner sales manager the credit, even if I don't tag it in Salesforce. So there's basically no competition between them. And I know for now it's fine. It's not a lot of money. As we scale, I'll probably have to go to the ContentSquare old playbook and try to see if I can do that. But for now, there's no attribution problem. There's no between AEs or PSMs. There's nothing, no competition.
And how are you doing that? It's just self-reported in that case? You said it's not showing up in Salesforce, but we'll all give you credit anyway. Is that just because they say, hey, we did this with the partner?
So we're going into really operational questions, and I love that. And answer actually one of the people who helped me originally set this up is our good friend Balthazar. So a shout out to him from this podcast. But basically, I'm looking at three things right now in attribution, and in operations, there's many ways to do that. But I'm looking at the lead source, and the lead source is it's one source of truth, right? We bought a list 10 years ago. The lead source doesn't change. It's whatever the lead source came from when the lead was created. There's no changing it after it's been set in the system. Then I'm looking at the pipeline source, and the pipeline source is whoever put it in pipeline or whoever did band, and that doesn't have a lot of options, right? It's either an inbound SDR or an outbound SDR, one of our partners or a member of our partnerships team, or what we call other. What is other? Other is a CSM could have met someone at an event, one of our executives, right? I get a lot of inbound people reaching out to me saying they're interested in DealHub, and then I qualify them quickly, right? Basically, basic band. And the pipeline source is whoever put it in pipeline. Marketing will never be a pipeline source because, again, they don't really qualify leads. And then the field that we call today a DealHub attribution is the field that you might argue about. And that field is basically not who pushed them through the door. That's the pipeline source, but who put them in we know what the lead source was. We know who pushed them through the door. Who got them to stand in front of the door? That's the attribution. And in the whole funnel, that is basically almost the last touch, right? It's the last touch before the qualification. And that's what I'm trying to measure right now. So did they come through a contact us form on the website? Did they come? And that, we're using Gong like a lot of companies do, or, other competitors. Sometimes someone will go on a call and say a lead came inbound through our website, but someone will say on a call, how did you hear about us? And say, oh, one of your partners told me to reach out to you. They didn't make the intro, but they told us. And then I know, okay, this is not come because someone searched for DealHub online or searched for CPQ. They actually heard from a partner, and for one reason or another, they didn't make a direct intro, but the partner sent them our way. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to give that partner credit, but at least I know what pushed them to come to me, and I know which source is working for me. And that's what I'm trying to focus on. What am I getting return on?
This sounds like a very simple way to do it. Why don't more companies just do this? Like it seems pretty clear. Yeah. Like if you do it, well, I'll share a stat with you guys, right? So there was a webinar that John Miller and Carrie Lou Dietrich did earlier this week, or I think maybe it was last week, where they had almost 300 companies share what attribution models they use. And interestingly, if your revenues were less than 5 million, 44% of the companies, which is the largest share of that pie, said they're using multi-touch. If you're between 5 million and 20 million, the most popular model was inbound, which is whoever hit the contact us form, got it. And then between 20 to 50 million, it was last touch. Between 50 to 100 million, it is first touch. And all the companies over 100 million were all using multi-touch. So it goes to show there's no right or wrong way. It's just the way that works for you, and you just kind of have to like stick with it. And that's kind of the thing that we learned. Like, we talk about our mutual friend Balthazar, but like the thing that we worked on at Avalara too was there was no right or wrong way. It was just the way that we wanted to do it, and as long as we kept it consistent over the years, it worked.
Yeah, and that's all. To be honest,
I don't know, Asher. I think the data and ops people are falling over at that statement.
I'm sure. Yeah. But they don't get to make the rules, So, fortunately, if you're a VP of Partnerships, you do get to decide those pieces. But this model sounds pretty simple and straightforward.
Again, at the end of the day, I realized after sitting in the CRO chair, I only care about one thing. Well, I need pipeline.
Yes,
I need pipeline. I know my stats on closing pipeline. It's pretty consistent, right? And I know what the impact of pipeline has on my business. Then it begs the question, how do I get the pipeline? And I really want to know, what is it that brings people to speak with me? Yeah. And if I have the answer for that, and this is a pretty simple way to measure it, right? There's a lot of other things you can go into data. You can have teams on teams, but I just needed a simple way, and I put everyone in the room. I put marketing, SDR, everyone, sales, partnerships, and I told them, listen, we win or fail together. I truly don't care. I don't want to see anyone celebrating if you hit your number, if someone else doesn't, right? And if partnerships brings me 100% of my leads this quarter, I'll be fine with it. Obviously, I'm going to ask some questions on, do I need to shift everything to partnerships or and maybe the answer is everyone helped, right? Marketing helped partnerships and SDR helped partnerships. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I want to know what's the best return on my investment. Yeah. And that answers that question.
This is a fun one because when we used to have these debates, we used to just say, why don't we take the yellow pages and just load it all up into CRM? And then they're all there. And then the lead source is yellow pages, And then we still have to figure out who, and as you said, who gets these people in front of the door. And that's really, at the end of the day, what really matters, I'm sure the awareness and the ads and all, you just have, as a company gets bigger, you just have to do those things. Like, there's no way you're getting it out of that because it's just so competitive in the marketplace. And if you are not front and center or trying to be there, whichever way you do it, you're going to lose out. You have to be top of mind. And then whether a demand gen campaign brought the person to the door, or a partner brought them to the door, or they got there themselves, like, it's also okay. But I think you have to keep your marketing engine on.
Do you have a process for asking prospects this question? Because I think one of the things in the marketing community that's been talked about a lot is this concept of dark social and community, actually, and how companies need to be invested in it. But the attribution for them is probably worse than for partners, right? If these things are heard peer-to-peer in a community that you invested in, you don't necessarily know it came from that community. So one thing that marketers do is on their forms, they put like, where did you hear from us? You can also do it in like a BDR and SDRs, like having conversations to qualify. Is that something you guys are thinking about to try to get more of this information of like, where is this really coming from? Who really had the impact in getting them into the pipe?
So absolutely. And we didn't put it in the forms and not with the SDRs because we didn't want to create any friction in the process of getting them to the table. But we are asking, when the salesperson runs the discovery in the first 10 minutes of the conversation, their discovery, the AE will ask, how did you hear about us? And that is super important. By the way, something very special about the way things are at DealHub, and this is not credit to me, it's credit to my predecessor and the company culture, but everything is exposed. All of the emails, all of the calls that AEs have, sometimes AEs will go and listen to other calls, everything the SDR does. So even, my emails, my calendar, my conversations with prospects and partners, et cetera, everything is out there. So they ask, and then obviously it's captured and gone, and we then update the opportunities with it. And you spoke about communities. It's something I didn't really have in my previous role, but here, I guess in the CPQ world or in the billing and CLM and all of the revenue operations world, these communities are very, very, very strong. And we get a lot of business there. We also learned that even if we didn't get a lead that was generated there, 9 times out of 10, a prospect will go and ask in one of these communities, hey, have you ever heard of DealHub? How does that compare to Salesforce CPQ or any other company out there in the market.
Yeah, this is another interesting data point, and it's a sign of where things are at right now. I said another event. Clearly, I was in the field pretty much this entire week. But the event was specifically for like operators or private equity companies and people that want to be board members and who are current board members and stuff. And the question about just like the state of go to market came up, and I mean, as we all know, like pipeline is down everywhere, right? And especially if your only motion was outbound, for sure it is. And so I didn't expect this answer, but the number one go-to-market method that people recommended in that audience, and just note that this is like board member level people, right? At this thing, they're like people from Blackstone and TCV and stuff like that, was community. And essentially, like a bunch of the private equity operators were saying that investing in communities or starting your community is whether it's for customers or whether it's an industry association or participating in one, is actually the way to go, and is how some of the companies that are getting their pipeline are getting it, and they're showing up authentically. One of the examples was like the thing that Sixth Sense did, and I know Sixth Sense started this thing 6 years ago, and they didn't basically they helped build the community, but they didn't organize it. So what I'm trying to say is, like, they hired Matt Hines, who's actually a very well-known marketer, to lead these sessions, and every Friday Matt would lead like these ask me anything questions, AMA sessions, for the last, I believe, 5 years. And today, for about 300 to 400 CMOs joined that session. And in total, that community has about 3,500 CMOs in it. I mean, it's pretty big. I mean, this is like a amazingly huge build that is generating a bunch of pipeline for them. But they don't talk about their product. They don't talk about their services. All they talk about is how do they make that CMO a hero. And it's kind of something that we've talked about on this podcast as well. Like most of the technology companies that are building for partnerships don't also do that. Like, they don't talk about who the hero of their story is versus the hero of their story is the partnership teams and people who care about building with partnerships. But this community thing is like catching on big time. So lesson to everybody else: let's go invest more in communities. And if you want one for partnerships, I know one.
and you're not supposed to be salesy in your community, Asher. You're just violating your own rule.
I'm being as authentic. You two know me the longest probably in this space. I'm being as authentic as I possibly can.
That's true.
You shouldn't need to apologize. Partnerships leaders is everyone's baby. So
exactly.
we're all very sentimental, and it's absolutely fine. And but jokes aside, I think one of the things I found out in this role. So I moved to an industry of sales tech, maybe a little bit of fintech, right? Because we also sell to CFOs, our billing product, but I mostly sell to the end customer, while revenue operations is, they're the implementers and they maintain the system. At the end of the day, the AEs and the sales leadership are the users of our platform. They use it day in and day out. And the incredible thing that I found out about the last decade, speaking of community, is that my Rolodex is crazy. And it's not a Rolodex of an account executive or a sales leader. That, they also have great Rolodexes, but my Rolodex is actually in the partner ecosystem. And it's a strong one, right? It's people that I built relationships with for years. I like them, I get to call them my friends. And now when I need something, even if it's feedback, not just an intro to go to somewhere, I can reach out to people very comfortably and say, hey, do you mind? And you know this, in the partnership world, everyone always helps, right? I don't think I've ever gotten in a request on LinkedIn, a message, doesn't matter if it's a 2-person company or a 200-person company, says, hey, can you help us? Can you jump on a call and help us? We're selecting a PRM and we need some advice. I'll always say yes. I'll always help make intros to other people. I'll always make, intros to people looking for work. It's something that is pretty unique to the partner community. Again, it's our livelihood. It's who we are and what we do. And it's really nice in this role, right? I'm finding that I know so many people that I didn't even realize I know them. They were always partners. Now they're my target audience. So I also try not to take advantage of that too much, right?
we had this like conversation internally, and not to kind of segue, because I think we tackled the attribution question pretty well, and we'll come to the outsourcing services question a little bit. But we in PL a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at just our membership experience reporting and stuff like that. And what I was saying was like, look, there's like two types of people in partnerships. There are builders who like go build these programs and teams and stuff like that, and then there's connectors. And the debate we were having internally was like, well, is the builder market bigger or is the connector market bigger, right? Because there's a lot of people that would like to connect because they're really searching for who are the right people that can help their business forward. And then the builders are like focused on the programmatic elements, right? They're like, okay, the lead source has to be correct, and the opportunity source has to be correct, and the days to close is this, and the CAC calculation is this, and then now how do I, who are the next 5 people I'm going to hire, and there's a distinct persona in between the two. And actually, Kelly, you'll remember, like Alan talked about the same thing too. He was like, the people that are the partner salespeople and the programs people are just two different breeds.
Yeah, I think they definitely are. And within a company, you want both.
Yeah. But back to community, I'll point this thing out because this is kind of special because, I mean, to how PL started, like when PL started, I believe like of the original 13, which Gilad was one of them, I think 40% of us competed against each other. And I remember that, and this is why it's important to be a parts of communities, because it's all about people. The companies will always be around, but the people kind of help each other and get to the next point in their careers and stuff. But I think, Gilad, you and Chris competed, right?
So it's funny you bring it up. There's a funny story there, and it's something that taught me a lot about my career. And honestly, Chris is the one who took the first step. So Chris and I were first partners. He was working at Optimizely. I was working at Clicktail. We were both trying to, grow something. And the first time we met, he was living in Australia, and I came there for a visit. We had a sizable business there, and we met at Sydney, and it was a lot of fun. And we really connected, and we stayed in touch, even after he left Optimizely. Then we started competing against each other. And I guess the first month, he was at Full Story. We didn't speak. And after a month, I get a message from him saying, "This is ridiculous. We're friends. We're partners. I'm booking time to speak with you." And we had a great conversation. And it's not just that, by the way, the first email that started PL was Chris sending an email saying, I need to pick a PRM. What do you guys think? But we actually took it to a different place, Chris and I. We actually said, okay, there's more competition in this market. And we started having regular conversations that were not just about us as friends or the industry. It was actually about the business. And we said, okay, we're competing. I'm not going to share, sensitive information with you, but can we help each other become better without having to take the other one down? And the answer was absolutely yes. And it was pretty cool because then I reached out to other people. There's just one company who was a competitor of mine that we never had any contact with. I'm not going to say who that was. And it was weird to me that the partnership leaders there never wanted to connect. But with the rest of them, I was in touch, and I learned that from Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting because when you think about it in general, right, like compete, like so many partners are both competitive, but also to your point, there's ways you can grow together, right? And you think about this particularly in newer or smaller markets, like you look at a lot of the partner tech, right? They'd be better off banding together to create demand for the category. And this, you could look at any new like technologies, than they would focusing on taking each other down. And some companies get that. And I think partner people are well equipped to understand that and like leverage that. And to your point, obviously there's things you keep to yourself and you're not discussing, but like also being able to switch tracks and say like, what do we have in common that we're both trying to aim and can help each other? And I think that's just something that we don't, in the partnerships world, I don't feel like we talk about that enough, is like how you navigate those like competitive cooperative relationships or partnerships.
Yeah, and I'm specifically bringing up this topic right now because if I heard this in this like little event of 70 people that like people at board levels are talking about community, I'm sure like teams are going to hear about it, and by virtue of this podcast, maybe people can take away that like it's okay to participate in communities even though your competitor is there. And actually, in PL today, you have AWS, Microsoft, Google Cloud. They're all in PL today, but it was like thanks to folks like Gilad and others who like kind of set the stage for all of this stuff to be in place. By the way, to close the topic, or maybe Gilad, do you have a point in it? Because I want to close the topic with one other interesting point that I want to make about just the beginnings of PL.
No, nothing about the beginning of PL. I did want to touch on another topic, but I'll keep it for later. Go
Okay.
about PL.
Well, the fun part is like, I hope Nelson Wang is going to be listening to this podcast because he prides himself to being the official first member of PL. But I believe Gilad is actually probably the unofficial first member of PL because. But when we went paid because we needed resources to like really turn the dial up on just marketing and telling stories about the professionals in this space. Nelson was the first person to put his credit card down, but God, you were actually the person who actually was like, okay, you know what? I think there's something here. We should kind of go build it out. And then as we were kind of kicking off some of our other programs, you kind of helped us a lot. So thanks for like helping us like get this thing going. And it's very interesting where it's all become. And then Kelly was the other person who always said like, do all the things that you guys will do has to be of high quality. Please don't go do high volume stuff because it's going to kill the brand and kill everything. So it's a pretty special episode that the both of you are on the pod with me, and look how far we've all come. So thank you to both of you.
Yeah, and by the way, I do believe he was the first one. I believe I was the first paid company. Like,
yeah, totally.
I think so. I'm not sure about that. And it's funny. I remember I was in a vacation in Thailand, and Chris Samila sent me a message saying, like, "What do you think if we started charging money for this?" And my first reaction was, I'm not sure. Are we going to lose a lot of the people, or are people actually going to pay? What is it going to look like? And I told him, look, I'm in with whatever you guys decide. Like, I will support that. I will participate. But I wasn't sure. Like, is this going to all crash? And the funny thing is, it actually got better. When people paid to participate, it actually got better. It removed a lot of the noise, and it brought in people who really wanted to be part of this. And it also brought a lot of people who were starting to get, a lot of value through this, and real value. And as you know, Asher, for you, like, the heat went up then, right? There's more expectation. You're paying for a product. You expect to get a return. I think it was a brilliant decision that you guys made, and a very, very, a very brave one, because I was like 50-50. Is it going to crash, or is it going to be a huge success?
Yeah, I think we went from like 900 free members to like 200 paid members in 1 week. So that was quite the heart attack.
Yeah, but you guys have that chart, I think, where it goes down and then it shoot back up, and then and to your point, it was much higher quality dialogue. And I think that's true with a lot of things, right? When people are paid, they actually invest and they actually care and they actually show up.
Yeah.
I actually had
unless it's a gym, then they don't.
I recently had a prospect, and they're trying to build an internal business case. It's a pretty big company to bring us on, and they wanted to do a POC. And it was a very, very small POC. And I said, you know what? Like, I really don't. Let's move fast. I'm not going to charge anything. And she insisted. And she said, no, you are going to charge. We're going to pay you for this, because if we don't pay for this, it will make my life a lot harder internally to get people's attention. So paid is always, there's more seriousness. Yeah. People take it more seriously. It's like my gym membership, right? I'm already paying for it. I'm forcing myself to go to the gym because I paid for it. And again, it's not about, I don't really care about the money. It's not a lot of money, but it's a commitment, right? I paid for it. I have to do it.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was going to move to talk to us about the challenges that you're facing in getting services outsourced, because I'm assuming there's a number of people that are out there that are trying to do that, and then there's another group of people that are saying, hey, we want to work with GSIs, and GSIs, like, if you don't give them a services opportunity, they're not going to do anything with you. And so it'd be interesting to hear like what you're facing right now, and then we'll have you back like in 6-7 months and you can give us an update on where you're at.
Oh, wow. I don't have any luck in my career with this. No luck at all with the companies I work for. So, first it was click-telling ContentSquare, which came to a market that the competition back then, IBM, who acquired a company called Tea Leaf, was all code, and the partners had a lot of work there, and a lot of it was on-prem. So ton of services hours, that golden 3 to 5x of services that partners love so much. Then I joined DealHub, and my biggest, honestly, almost my only competitor in the CPQ space today, right, is Salesforce. And what's unique about our platform is that there's no code. So I can give a partner on my platform, maybe a 1x. So 1x on the software that I sell, they'll get in services. Salesforce is about 5x of that, right? So if they sell $100,000 license, the partner will get a $500,000 deal, and that's what I have to deal with. And it's a battle. In ContentSquare, we found ways to make it more appealing for these partners. And honestly, with on-premise starting to deprecate, then it was a lot easier because there's no other option in the market. But today, even though a partner knows that DealHub is an easier product, better product to work with, etc., they'll say, okay, I have $1.5 million of engagement here versus $300,000-$400,000. Who am I going to go with? Oh, and every time they'll need to change something in the system, they're going to have to come back to me and pay me more money for my services. And
Yep.
in the, I don't know if you know this, in RevOps, apparently they charge a lot of money for services, a lot more than, well, Kelly, you probably know this because you're in this side of the business, but I didn't know this. I thought it was still, MarTech shops where I know what the service hour is worth. In RevOps, it's a lot more expensive. So this is a big challenge. I'm trying to crack it now, and I have some ideas, right? But not all of them are working right now, and I'm gonna have to find a way to convince that ecosystem that they need to switch from this cash cow that they have to working with me, and that's not an easy task, especially with the large ones. And I'm already seeing the impact on my deals, right? I go into a big deal, we compete, then the prospect will go and ask their CRM services shop, right? Who's probably also going to do the re-implementation of Salesforce CPQ, or they're going to do the implementation of DealHub. And they ask them, what do you think about DealHub? And they're like, these guys are nice, but why don't we re-implement Salesforce CPQ? And in 2 years, we're going to implement RCA, which is the new product they're going to be launching, and charge you another $1.5 million. And these are credible partners. These are credible integrators and implementers, the biggest names that you can think of in the industry, and they're saying them, don't go with DealHub. That's something that's very, very hard to explain to a customer. And it's also very hard to go and say, look, your trusted advisor is actually trying to get another $1.5 million paycheck from you. And I also don't want to do that because I don't want to burn bridges with them. So I'm between a rock and a hard spot right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to get out of it.
That's a really interesting position to be in. Asher, have you seen others navigate that successfully in a particularly original way?
I was just going to say, I think Gilad needs to pick a better ecosystem partner. Hint, the person who's on this podcast with me.
Invest in the HubSpot ecosystem. That's less. It's more aligned with where you're coming from.
That's what I'm doing. You can,
I know. Like we started the podcast. We're good partners.
And now I have another.
Go to the career page right now on the website, and you'll be a strategic alliances manager for HubSpot.
I love this.
And now I have another clip that I can spend to the sponsorships team at HubSpot. Thank you. This podcast is great. So let's talk a little bit about like your journey now as a CRO, right? Because and this is super interesting because in my journey when I became a CRO for Demand Matrix, right? Like even though it was not a huge company, I took the role very seriously in terms of aligning myself to a North Star of optimizing revenue, right? And I had to build new skills, and that just that journey gave me more empathy for how partnership leaders should present themselves and the things that they should focus on. That makes me or makes the CRO's life easier. And then it's easy for the CRO to just say, you know what? I understand what this person is trying to do. I also understand where they're trying to go and the resources that they need. And here, by the way, like just go do it, right? And so talk to us about like how you're thinking about your CRO journey.
So it was an interesting one, and I have to say that in many ways, ContentSquare was a great school for that because I moved from ClickTel, which was a relatively small organization, about the same size I am in today, to ContentSquare that went from about 400 employees to 2,500 employees in 4 years, and to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. So I got to see the ContentSquare CRO. I got to see what he did from the passenger seat. And that was pretty cool now to come to the table at the CRO role and say, okay, I've seen that. I know how to do that, or at least I think I know how to do that. And there are some things I want to do different, obviously, or mistakes that we made at ContentSquare that I can learn from. But my journey was first, honestly, just to get a baseline. And that is the most important thing is try to see where the company is at, what is working right now, and understanding that I am going to go through an acceleration process in the next few years. How do I build foundations so when I do go through that acceleration, not everything crashes, but keep the magic that we have today as a company. So my journey was really doing it's like a due diligence in a way. I came in, I spoke with as many people as I could and as many teams as I could. I tried looking at the data. Obviously, when you join a startup, the data is not as clean as I would have hoped it would be. And I first told him, look, nothing is going to change now. Nothing is going to change. We're going to take the first few months with no changes. But already in the background, working with my operations team, there's a lot of changes that I'm working on to be launched after we, things settle in. And I also understand if my hypothesis from the discovery that I made and from the interview process are actually the right ones, or am I making a big mistake?
Sweet.
And which functions do you own as a CRO?
So I own sales, pre-sales, SDR, operations, and funny enough, design. And yeah, I don't really know why, but it sits under me. And then I also own what we call it's another function of semi-marketing. It's a sourcing function of
acquisition marketing, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
So demand gen, basically.
Not demand gen, but the sourcing. All the intent data, populating our Salesforce, everything around prioritization of TAM and all of the TAM exercise sits under me. Okay. So I have a team that currently sits under the SDR leader. By the way, funny story, the person leading SDR was my first boss when I started working in high tech. And
full circle.
he was my first hire here. I was like, it's a good timing. Let's do this. So he owns that as well, and these are all the functions that sit under me today. And I'm accountable for the entire number. So even though renewals don't sit under me from a responsibility standpoint, or with a chief customer officer, I'm in charge of the full company number. So if we're also involved in a lot of the renewal stuff. If that number drops, obviously my number goes up. So I'm in charge of the ARR target, not necessarily just revenue growth or revenue expansion targets.
Yeah, and the reason I say I wanted to double click on this path is because the we've talked a lot about the chief partner officer role, right? But like that, for a partner first company or a partner led company, the CPO is the CRO. Like this is actually a really awesome decision for your exec team to make. Is let's just have somebody that is an expert in partnerships and bring them here, because then they can unblock the other stuff, the partner motion, because we already have a direct motion, which I believe you already do, and then for this next phase of growth, because layering in a partner motion built out or at a scale level is one heck of a transformation process. And so if you have somebody that just is seasoned enough, and then it's like one person, right? Like essentially what your CEO has done is said, I have a revenue leader and a partnership leader combo in one role, basically.
Yeah, and I have a VP partnerships in my team, and he's really good. Came from Monday.com, and he knows the business in and out. I told him, I'm probably going to be the easiest boss you'll ever have from that perspective. Like, you don't need to sell me on anything. I'll probably sell you more than you sell me. But he's, we're taking a team now. It's him and another two guys, and we're tripling it in the next couple of months. So he's going to take on a lot of responsibility. And obviously, one of the first things that I'm starting, aside from strategic alliances, is also building a partner program, which we don't have today, and B, building indirect motions around the world. So we're going to start with some markets that we chose, and we're bringing in, the typical person to start indirect motions, right? Someone who knows how to sell direct themselves, but also knows how to enable and build partner ecosystems. So we have the first person joining next week, and I'm really excited about that. And hopefully, we'll be able to accelerate that pretty fast. I've always had a very very good success with going indirect in new markets and starting small and very, very focused. So I'm excited about that.
Let's close the podcast on the topic of reporting, like partnerships reporting now, org-wide, or to your exec team, or even to your board, right? Like, talk to us a little bit about how you're thinking about that in this new role.
Oh, wow. I have such a long story to tell you here, so I'll try to be very concise.
Great. That's why I was like, this is going to be a fun segment to close on.
I started my career reporting into sales.
Yep.
Moved the reporting into VP of Partnerships and Corp Dev. So that person reported directly to the CEO. I then moved back to reporting into sales when he became the COO of ClickTail. Then at ContentSquare, I was a direct motion. So partnerships was a complete standalone motion. And a few years into that, while I stayed an executive in the company, the CRO and I made a decision that we will report into sales. And I can elaborate on that in a moment and why we did that. And now leaving ContentSquare, partnerships reports to the CEO again. So we did a full journey there. Here at DealHub, partnerships report into me. I think it also makes sense because of the structure of the company, the way we do things, and also my background. Obviously, it doesn't make sense for it to be a standalone poll, but it really depends, right? Partnerships wears many hats and has many roles. I want to take you to the point where I spoke with the CRO and I said, we need to move into the revenue org, and his first response was, why? Like, he wasn't really excited about managing me or the partnerships organization, and he, for him, I was like, not a contract.
You were like the designer. You're like, why would I want this design team?
No, I want the design team. Please, design team. If you're listening to this podcast, I want. No.
We love you. We love you.
We love you. No, but it wasn't about that. It was about, I expect you to get me X amount of pipeline, X amount of closed business. Why do I need to manage this? But we both agreed that in a company like ContentSquare, which was very much sales first and very, in a way, wasn't partner friendly. The company really wanted to do partnerships, but the whole motion was fixed on direct and direct only. And I realized that unless it sits under the CRO, and the CRO is actually accountable for this as well, we're not going to be able to succeed. We're not going to be able to solve the attribution problems. We're not going to be able to get on deals. We're not going to be able to force AEs in a way to put partnerships in the sales motions. And we have to do that. We have to not be in competing ends in a way. We have to have the same manager. If you were asking me where should partnerships be reporting into, the best answer I can give you is I don't know. It truly depends. And I know it's an annoying one, but it depends on what is the go-to-market motion of the company. It depends on the stages of the company, the culture of the company. I think each CEO needs to do a due diligence of its own company. And by the way, I'm not, even though, I ran the whole thing at ContentSquare, like all the partnerships functions sat under me, and I split it into kind of two trees. And I think you're having at least one of those leaders speak at Catalyst this year, Chris Mosa, who is, one of the best in the business, if not the best in the business. But I'm also okay with splitting these functions and saying, alliances can sit here, or maybe tech part. In some organizations, partnerships sit in product, and it's a product function, right? It truly depends. And I think giving like an answer of partnerships should also always be standalone, or always report to the CRO, or always be in product is not the right way to go. I really think every company needs to think. And it doesn't mean that because we started with partnerships reporting to one place, partnerships end reporting in another place 2 years from now. And look at the ContentSquare journey, right? Like we did the full circle. We were standalone into sales, and then standalone again when we achieved the goals that we wanted to achieve.
Yeah, just for our listeners, you probably will hear a bleep, and it'll be like a 15-minute bleep because we didn't like Gilad's answer because we only care about CPOs. I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So here's the answer: partnerships should all.
That was well said, because I'm totally joking, and I'm only a little bit more jovial today because it's both of you, and I've known both of you forever. But it is the right answer. Like depending, and even inside the partner function, you have to decide, is partner marketing going to be part of the partnerships function, or it's not going to be part of the function, or the programs piece is going to be part of the function, it's not going to be part of the function, or where does the function live, how does it resourced, what are the
enablement, where does enablement live? Totally. And also the product support, right? Tech partnerships, wherever they are, they still need to be connected to the product org and the APIs and things like that. So I think the reality is, right, partnerships should be deeply cross-functional. And so I think that's why there's not one good answer. Is it depends on the players and the disposition of the business across the board.
Yeah, but what is important is for leaders to be very clear on each one of those teams, what are the outcomes they're driving, and how do they tie back to the company's goals. And sometimes like there's a narrative on LinkedIn where like, hey, we have the partnerships team and the goals are tied to the corporate strategy, which is great, but it's like one step down. It's like each one of the teams inside of that big unit, how does that tie back to the corporate strategy or the business goals is also important. Okay, one very last question. I know I wanted to close on this one, but talk about the metrics, right? And specifically talk about like, as you are does the board at DealHub look at partnership metrics in the board deck? Are you thinking about creating a separate deck or slides, or are the partnership metrics integrated into the company dashboard? Like talk to us a little bit tactically about metrics and how and where they show up.
So today it's pretty basic, right? It's mostly which deals partners sourced, etc. I'm looking to build something a bit more robust now. That is that I will be presenting to the board. The first slide, by the way, I showed the board is a kind of a 3-year plan where, and it was a purely numbers plan, right? What is the TAM? How much of this TAM are we going to acquire? How many deals are they going to touch a year? What is going to be the average deal size, and how much money are partnerships going to touch in 2028? That was basically the first slide I showed them. Now I need to break that down into the metrics, right? How many partners are we onboarding? How many partners touch our deals? But the cool thing that I'm actually going to start presenting from the next board is deals we lost because of partners, not our partners. Deals that we lost because we weren't partnering with the partners who came in there and made a recommendation against us, or brought in, one of our competitors, or endorsed one of our competitors. And I think that is a big sell, right? If you know what you're losing, when you don't know what you're missing out on, right, then no one really cares. But if you know what you lost because of this, then you're starting to feel the pain. And if you see the same partner, right, if I see, I'm just throwing a name, has nothing to do with anything, but if PwC are in all of our deals and we keep on losing because they keep on making a recommendation against us, then that is probably my sign to recruit the strategic alliances manager for PwC and make sure that I give them a lot of love and start partnering into that organization. So that is definitely something that I'm going to be presenting there.
That's smart.
I love that idea. How are you tactically going to get that information? Are you training your sellers to make sure that's logged in the CRM, like who's on the other side?
Yeah, we did that at ContentSquare, and we're doing it right now. Both competitors and partners. I want to know what my ecosystem is, right? I want to know how many deals I worked with HubSpot. I also want to know how many deals I worked with HubSpot was already in there, right? And then I know what is my coverage with HubSpot, what is the opportunity, etc. So we try to tag everything in the system. That can teach us a lot about market and opportunity potential.
This is the beauty of having a partner-friendly CRO, is you can get data like that. As to like even understanding who the partners are on the competitive side. Like, I would love to have that data in my CRM.
Yeah, well,
we're still CRO on the podcast.
the beauty is that we're still small enough. We're not a tiny company, right? We're over 220 people, but we're still small enough for me to be able to come in and make these changes and ask to start collecting this data and for it to be impactful, right? If I try to do this now in a company the size of HubSpot, it will probably take me over a year just to, get the wheels in motion, develop it, convince people to start putting that data, track that they're putting the right data in, et cetera. So I have it pretty easy right now and I'm doing it early on. And that's what I always tell CEOs when they speak with me. I say, everything you do about partnerships, do it early on. After you grow, it's close to impossible to really change. It's very difficult.
It's much harder to come in after the fact and get the partners embedded than it is if you, to your point, do it from day one, and then everybody just has that muscle.
Exactly.
Super. Well, this was a fantastic podcast and also a fantastic way to kick off the weekend with you two. So thanks so much for spending time with us, Gilad. Wish you best of luck. We'll stay in touch and hopefully see you in person at Inbound this year, by the way, which I think you were going to be at.
I will be there, and I'm looking forward to seeing you both.
Yeah, we'll both be there for sure.
Super. Have a good weekend.
See you later, Kelly.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player or YouTube. Share it with a colleague or tell us what you thought of it on LinkedIn. See you next time.